Hello students, and welcome to this video where we're going to discuss the concept of simple interest. So I really get excited about this section because we're really talking about money and budgeting, and these are things that relate to all of us. And interest is something that we've all dealt with in either a positive or negative way. So let's think about really what is interest. Well, it's how much is paid for the use of money as a percent or an amount. Money is never free to borrow. People can always find a use for money, but it costs to borrow money. So for example, if you're borrowing money from somebody, you generally pay them back interest. So you pay back the amount you borrow plus an additional amount, sort of like a thank you for letting me use this money. Banks also give you an interest rate because they are borrowing your money. Banks don't have all of this money to give to others, but because you invest your money into the bank or you place your money into that particular bank, they then have money to, allow other people to withdraw from their bank account. And so therefore, the bank is technically using your money, which is why they pay you an interest. Whenever you borrow money, you have to repay the amount you borrowed and make extra payments for interest. When you lend money, you typically earn income from making your money available to other people. So how much does it cost to actually borrow money? Well, different places will charge different amounts at different times, but they usually charge as a percent per year of the amount borrowed, and that's what you identify as the interest. So interest will vary from place to place, and you may have heard before that people tend to shop around for the best interest rate because people know that if they are going to borrow money, when they have to return it back, they're hoping that they'll have a low interest percentage rate because they don't want to have to pay too much more than what they borrowed. So let's pretend you borrowed $1,000 from the bank, and the local bank says that you have 10% interest on that $1,000. So to borrow it for 1 year, that $1,000, 10% of $1,000 is $100. So when you pay back the bank, you'll pay them back $1,000 plus $100. So you can see that here that this is a simple full year loan, but banks often want the loan paid back in monthly amounts, and they also charge extra fees too. So it appears that you only borrow $1,000, you pay back $1,100, but there could be small details that you're missing out, like those extra fees or needing to pay your sum back in monthly amounts. So some important vocabulary word for you to keep in mind. Borrower is the person that is borrowing the money, while the lender is the person giving the individual who needs the money. You have the actual loan, which is the amount that you're borrowing, but then the repayment is the amount that you have to give back, and it includes the interest within it. So you have the borrower, you have the lender, you have your principal, which is your original amount that you start with, and then you have your interest, which is the particular percentage rate of your principal value, and then you have your repayment, which is the total amount you have to repay back. So what happens if we're borrowing money for more than 1 year? The bank will charge simple interest. The term simple means you're working with the simplest way of calculating interest. Once you understand how to calculate simple interest, you can move on to other varieties like annual percentage yield, annual percentage rate, and compound interest. When thinking about simple interest, you're basically paying the same amount of interest every single year. So you think about the amount of interest on your original value, so that's $100. It's going to take you 2 years, so you're going to do 100 times 2 so that you know your total interest is actually $200. So you would add that principal value of $1,000 plus your total interest rate of $200 to end up with your final amount of $1,200. So here's essentially what's going on. You're multiplying your original value, which is P. You're then multiplying your interest rate value, which is R, and then you're multiplying by the time, which is T, and that lets you know how much interest you will have to pay. Now keep in mind, if you're asked what's the final amount that you have to pay back, the interest alone is not the amount that you're going to pay back, but you have to think about what was the original loan value, so how much did you borrow, plus what is your interest. So here's an example. Alex borrows $1,000 for 5 years at 10% simple interest. So to calculate the interest, I'm going to take 1,000, which is my principal. I'm going to multiply it by my rate, which is 10%. And I'm going to multiply it by time, which is 5 years. And I get a value of $500. So I need to add that because this is only the value of my interest. So I'm going to take the original value of $1,000. I'm going to add $500 to it so that now I know I have to pay back $1,500 after 5 years. So here's another example. Alex borrows $1,000 for 7 years at 6% simple interest. What would be our final interest value as well as the final amount to pay back? Well, in order to calculate the interest, we're going to do P times our R times our T value. And my P is 1,000 times my 6% times my time. Now, because I don't have a calculator, I'm actually going to solve this a little differently. I'm going to first try to figure out what is 6% of 1,000. And that's only because I don't have a calculator. If you recall, in our very first unit, we learned the blank percent of blank is blank. So I'm just filling that in. I'm using that information that we've learned in a previous section to solve. So I'm trying to see what is the percentage amount here. So that's 6 over 100 is equal to my is over my of. And this just makes it very easy for me to solve, especially because I'm working with numbers that are based off of 10. So it's really easy to solve. So I do 1,000 times 6, and that gives me 6,000. And then is equal to 100x. And in order to get x by itself, I divide by 100, and I get that 60 is equal to x. So now I know that that's the percentage rate value that I'm having to pay, and I need to do this for 7 years. So I'm going to take 60, and I'm going to multiply it times 7, and that's going to give me $420. And again, that is only my interest value. So to know how much I have to pay back as my final value, I'm going to take 1,000, I'm going to add it to my interest, and that lets me know that I'll be paying back $1,420. And just as a side note, banks almost never charge using simple interest. They want to earn more money, so they actually use something called compound interest, which we'll learn in our next section. And as always, I hope that you found this video helpful. That is it for this lesson. I hope that you're excited to continue talking about money and how we should manage our money and how we should budget. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.